Sometimes, life doesn't fall apart all at once. Sometimes it unravels quietly, little threads pulling loose before you even realise what's happening. That's what happened to me. 5 years, 1 engagement, and a lifetime of memories. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. I'm not here to tell you a perfect love story. I'm here to tell you the truth. The messy, painful, heartbreaking truth about how I almost married the wrong person, and how, in losing him, I might have just found myself. I never thought falling in love would feel so easy, so effortless. With Nicholas, it wasn't some sweeping, cinematic moment. It was 1,000 tiny things. The way he remembered that I hated olives and always picked them off my pizza, or how he'd save the last bite of dessert, the best bite, for me, without even thinking about it. The first few months felt like living inside a bubble. Just the two of us, laughing over stupid inside jokes, texting each other memes during boring work meetings, planning Friday night takeout like it was the highlight of our week. He'd call me after a long shift, his voice tired, but still somehow lighting up when he said my name. And God, hearing him say my name, it made me feel seen in a way no one else ever had. I can still picture the first apartment we shared. Tiny, kind of falling apart, with creaky floors and water that never got quite hot enough. But we didn't care. We turned that mismatched little space into a home. Fairy lights strung haphazardly across the living room, a second-hand couch that smelled faintly like the thrift store we bought it from, our cat Beans napping in sunbeams on the windowsill. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We built a life around the ordinary. Sunday morning pancakes in pyjamas, grocery shopping adventures where we'd argue over cereal brands, movie marathons where we'd fall asleep halfway through. Looking back now, those were some of the happiest days of my life. Not because they were flashy or exciting, but because they were real. Every small moment felt wrapped in something soft and golden, like I had finally found the place I belonged, tucked safely inside someone else's arms. Nicholas had this way of making even the most boring errands feel like an adventure. He'd narrate our trips to Target like we were explorers on a grand quest. He'd reach for my hand at red lights, squeeze it 3 times, our unspoken "I love you" signal. Those tiny gestures, they added up to something huge. When he proposed, it was the most perfectly imperfect moment. We were at our favourite hiking trail, breathless from the climb, our faces flushed from the heat. He dropped the ring box trying to pull it out of his pocket and swore under his breath, making me laugh so hard I nearly fell over. When he finally got down on one knee, grass stains and all, I didn't even hesitate. Yes. 1,000 times yes. After that, everything seemed to click into place. We spent hours lying in bed, dreaming about our future, talking about the little house we'd buy someday, the stupid nicknames we'd give our kids, the adventures we'd have growing old together. It felt limitless, like the world had cracked open just for us, and we could do anything, be anything, as long as we had each other. There was a sweetness to those days that I still taste when I close my eyes, a kind of innocent certainty that love was enough, that no matter what the world threw at us, we would always, always find our way back to each other. I believed it with everything I had, with my whole heart, and for a long time, so did he. I used to think that once you found your person, the hard part was over. That love, real love, was solid, unshakable, something you could build your whole life around without fear. But the truth is, even the strongest foundations can crack when you're not looking. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic fight, no obvious betrayal, just small shifts, barely noticeable at first. A missed text here, a distracted smile there. Little things I brushed aside, convincing myself they didn't mean anything. But somewhere, deep down, a quiet voice started to whisper, "Something's different. Something's wrong." I tried to ignore it, tried to hold tighter to what we had, but no matter how tightly you hold your breath, the storm still comes, and mine was already on the horizon. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Nicholas was just busy. That's all. His construction company had taken on some big projects. He was tired, stressed. It made sense, right? I said it so many times in my head that I almost believed it. But then the little things started piling up, tiny, stupid things that shouldn't have mattered. But somehow they did, like the way he barely glanced at the wedding venue photos I excitedly showed him one evening. I had spent hours narrowing them down, imagining us standing under fairy lights, exchanging vows. He scrolled through them in 10 seconds flat, tossed his phone onto the couch and muttered, "Looks expensive. It's just one day anyway." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I laughed it off, made some joke about being the crazy bride, but deep down, something inside me wilted a little. I told myself he was just stressed. I told myself a lot of things. He started going out more with his friend Mason after work, grabbing beers, watching games. At first, I didn't mind. Everyone needs time to decompress, but the frequency crept up. Once a week, then twice, then almost every other night. And when he came home, he wasn't really home. He'd plopped down on the couch, still smelling faintly of beer and cigarettes, eyes glued to his phone, barely acknowledging me. I missed him. Missed the way he used to pull me into his chest after a long day. Missed the way his smile used to reach his eyes when he looked at me. Instead, he became distant. Not angry. Not cold. Just somewhere else. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he just needed space. Maybe I was overthinking. But then came the missed texts. Wedding vendors needing decisions. Caterers asking for final menus. Left unread for hours, sometimes until the next day. When he did respond, it was always the same. "Looks fine. Whatever you want." Like it didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. The first time I tried to bring it up, we were in the kitchen, washing dishes side by side. I said it gently, careful not to sound accusatory. "Hey, is everything okay? You seem somewhere else lately." He paused, hands still submerged in soapy water, staring out the window for a beat too long. Then he shrugged and said, "Just tired. Work's been crazy." That should have reassured me. It didn't, because he didn't reach for me. Didn't offer a kiss or a hug or even a real smile. Just a shrug. Just tired. And I, like a fool, nodded and said, "Okay," pretending that was enough. But it wasn't. The distance between us was growing, invisible at first, like a hairline crack in glass. But once you see it, really see it, you can't unsee it, and you can't pretend it's not there. I started feeling it everywhere, in the way he never asked how my day was anymore. In the way our conversations, once easy and endless, now stumbled into awkward silences. In the way his eyes drifted past me, like he was looking for something, or someone, just beyond where I stood. I told myself it was just stress. I told myself it was just a rough patch. I told myself we loved each other, that love was enough. But some nights, lying awake in our shared bed, staring at the ceiling while he snored softly beside me, a terrifying thought crept in. What if love isn't enough? What if it never was? I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled the covers tighter around me, as if I could block it all out, as if pretending hard enough could turn back time, to when love was simple and easy and certain. But deep down, a part of me already knew the cracks had started, and no matter how tightly I closed my eyes, they were only going to get bigger. You always think you'll see it coming, the moment everything changes. Some grand betrayal, some obvious explosion. But sometimes, it sneaks up on you, hides in plain sight, behind distracted smiles, half-hearted kisses, the soft closing of a door that used to stay wide open. And then, without warning, one night, one conversation, one broken sentence, it all comes crashing down. I didn't know it yet, but the quiet unravelling was about to end, and the first shot, it was coming, louder, sharper, and so much more devastating than I ever could have prepared for. It was supposed to be a simple date night, a chance to reconnect, to shake off the distance that had been creeping between us like a slow, silent tide. I picked a new Italian restaurant downtown, not too fancy, but nice enough to feel special. I wore a dress I hadn't touched in months, something soft and familiar that used to make Nicholas's eyes light up. I even stocked the fridge with his favourite beer, thinking, maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to the way things used to be. The moment he walked through the door, I knew. I knew the night wouldn't be what I was hoping for. He barely glanced at me, murmuring a distracted "you look nice" without meeting my eyes. His smile was mechanical, like he had to remind himself to offer it at all. Still, I smiled back. Still, I reached for hope like a fool reaching for something already slipping through their fingers. The drive to the restaurant was stiff, filled with small talk that felt heavier than silence. He drummed his fingers against the steering wheel the whole way, a jittery, restless rhythm that grated on my nerves. I tried to tell him about a funny story from work, something light, something safe, but halfway through he zoned out, nodding at the wrong parts, eyes flickering toward his buzzing phone in the cup holder. By the time we were seated, I could feel the walls closing in. The restaurant was too warm, the lights too harsh, the clatter of silverware and chatter pressing against my skin. Nicholas scanned the menu like he couldn't care less what he ordered. I watched him from across the table, watched a stranger wear the face of the man I loved. When the waitress came, he ordered the first thing he pointed at. I ordered something I wouldn't even taste. We picked at our food, conversation dying faster than the melting ice in our glasses. Finally, desperate to break the tension, I brought up the honeymoon plans. Maybe dreaming about somewhere beautiful, somewhere far away, could pull him back to me. So, I was looking at some places in Costa Rica, I said, trying to keep my voice light, hopeful. I found this little beach resort. It looks perfect. He didn't even look up, just muttered, "Not sure it matters, might not even happen." For a second, I thought I misheard him. The words sat heavy in the air, like smoke after an explosion. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed, long, heavy, rubbing his hands over his face like he was exhausted by the very idea of explaining himself. "I don't know, okay?" he said, voice low but sharp. "I don't know if I'm ready for all this. The wedding, marriage, forever." It hit me like a slap I never saw coming. The air rushed out of my lungs. The restaurant tilted sideways. I sat frozen, staring at the man across from me, the man who, until 5 minutes ago, I thought was still my future, and realised I didn't recognise him at all. I felt the first sting of tears clawing at the back of my throat, but I swallowed them down, forcing my hands to stay still in my lap. I would not cry in the middle of a goddamn Italian restaurant. I asked him, barely able to force the words out, why he was saying this now. Why, after 5 years, after 8 months of planning a life together, after promising me forever with a shaky ring and wide, hopeful eyes. He stared at his half-eaten lasagna like it held the answers. He mumbled something about Mason, about how marriage changes people, about Mason's brother's ugly divorce. I don't remember exactly what I said after that. I know my voice shook. I know my hands trembled so badly I almost knocked over my water glass. I know the people at the next table kept sneaking glances at us, at the slow-motion car crash unfolding before them. The drive home was a graveyard. No music, no talking. Just the hum of the tyres against the asphalt and the cavernous silence between us. When we got back to the apartment, he grabbed a blanket and threw himself onto the couch without a word. No good night. No apology. I stood in the doorway for a long time, clutching my purse like a lifeline, wondering when exactly I had lost him, and if maybe, just maybe, I had been losing him for a lot longer than I realised. That night, I lay awake in our bed, alone, even though he was only a few feet away, listening to the faint, broken rhythm of his breathing. The apartment felt unfamiliar, like stepping into a stranger's house, and for the first time in our 5 years together, I wondered if I was already sleeping alone. I thought that night at the restaurant was the worst of it, that nothing could hurt more than hearing the man I loved say he wasn't sure about forever. I was wrong. Some heartbreaks come quiet. Others arrive like a blade to the ribs, sharp and deliberate, and sometimes, the person holding the knife is the one you trusted most. I didn't know it yet, but the real wound, the one I would carry long after the fighting stopped, was still waiting for me, and it would be carved not in anger but in laughter, his laughter. The next morning this apartment felt hollow, like all the warmth had been sucked out overnight, leaving just cold walls and colder silences. Nicholas shuffled around, eyes bloodshot, movements slow and heavy like he was wading through quicksand. He made coffee, burnt the bacon, mumbled an apology with a sheepish half-smile that barely touched his face. He didn't say a word about the night before, not about the restaurant, not about the couch, not about the heavy, aching silence that had swallowed us whole. Instead, he said he was meeting Mason and the guys for lunch, something about catching the game at the Rusty Nail. I nodded like it didn't rip me open. I let him go. Maybe some part of me still believed he just needed space, that a few beers and bad sports commentary could clear the storm out of his head. I spent the afternoon with Lena, pretending to care about throw pillows and shampoo at Target, pretending that retail therapy could stitch up the gaping hole in my chest. By the time I pulled back into our apartment complex, my phone buzzed with a text from Kyla, one of Nicholas's co-workers. It just said, "Are you okay?" 2 words. That's all it took for my heart to slam against my ribs. I called him immediately, voice trembling. Kyla hesitated. I could hear it in the way he cleared his throat, the way he stumbled over his words, but eventually he told me how the guys had been teasing Nicholas about settling down, how Nicholas, drunk, stupid, had laughed and said, if she were prettier, maybe I'd be more excited to marry her. And then he laughed, like it was funny, like it was just some harmless joke. I sat frozen in my car, staring blankly at the dashboard, my hands shaking so violently I dropped the phone twice before hanging up. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours, lifetimes. The sky turned from pale blue to heavy grey as the sun slipped behind the buildings. Still, I sat there. Still, I couldn't move. When I finally forced myself upstairs, Nicholas was sprawled on the couch, still in the same clothes, smelling like stale beer and cheap wings. His mouth was slightly open in sleep, a faint snore rattling from his throat. I stood there, staring at him. This man I thought I knew. This man I thought loved me. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to shake him awake and demand to know how he could ever, even drunk, even joking, reduce me to something so small, so disposable. But I didn't. I gathered up Beans, my sweet, oblivious cat, and locked us in the bedroom. I crawled under the covers, fully clothed, clutching Beans to my chest, as if his tiny heartbeat could anchor me to something real. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I laid there, replaying it over and over in my head. His words, his laugh, the look on his friends' faces, the way no one, not even Nicholas himself, had called it back, had said, "That's not true. That's not fair. She's beautiful. No one had defended me, not even him." And somehow that hurt even more than the words themselves. At some point the tears came, silent, relentless, soaking into the pillow. I cried until my chest ached, until my throat felt raw, until there was nothing left inside me but a hollow, echoing ache. I thought about our first date, about the way he'd looked at me, like I was something extraordinary. I thought about the nights he whispered forever against my skin. I thought about the mornings we woke up tangled together, laughing about nothing. Were those moments ever real, or were they just lies we told ourselves to make the hard parts easier? By the time the first grey light of dawn crept through the curtains, something inside me had shifted. Something had broken clean through, not with a scream, not with a bang, but with a quiet, aching certainty. This wasn't love anymore. Maybe it never really was. And as I lay there, blinking up at the cracked ceiling of a life we had built together, I realised something terrifying and freeing all at once. I didn't want to fix it. I didn't want to fight for it. I just wanted out. There's a moment, after the heartbreak, after the crying, after the screaming silence, where everything just settles. Not in peace, not in healing, but in a kind of quiet resignation, like the tide pulling back before a final, devastating crash. I lay there, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, realising something I had spent months, maybe years, refusing to admit. Some things, no matter how tightly you hold them, were never meant to be saved. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. I didn't know where I was going yet. I didn't know what life would look like on the other side of him. All I knew was that I couldn't stay. Not in that apartment. Not in that silence. Not in that version of love where I had to shrink myself just to fit. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was knowing that he wouldn't stop me. And somehow, that hurt most of all. The apartment felt different when I walked back in. Colder somehow, like it already knew I didn't belong there anymore. Nicholas wasn't home yet. Part of me was grateful. Part of me hated how easy it was, packing up my life without a fight. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, stuffing clothes into bags, gathering books and framed photos with trembling hands. Every item I touched carried a memory, and every memory felt heavier than the last, the green sweater he loved, the cracked coffee mug from our trip to the mountains, the Polaroid of us on New Year's Eve, faces flushed with champagne and laughter. I packed them all anyway, even the ones that hurt. Beans weaved between my legs, confused, meowing softly, like he could feel the shift in the air too. I scooped him up, pressing my face into his fur, breathing in the warm, familiar scent of him. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." The sun had started to set by the time I finished. The apartment looked gutted, stripped bare of all the little pieces that had made it home. It looked hollow, just like I felt. I was zipping up the last suitcase when I heard the door unlock. Nicholas stepped inside, stopping short when he saw the bags by the door. For a second, neither of us moved. The only sound was the soft thud of his keys hitting the counter. He looked tired, worn down in a way that went deeper than sleepless nights or hard work. His eyes flickered over the packed bags, over me standing stiffly in the middle of the living room, and something crumbled in his expression. "You're really leaving," he said quietly, like he couldn't believe it until he saw it with his own eyes. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. My throat felt like it was lined with broken glass. He stepped closer, hands twitching at his sides like he wanted to reach for me, but didn't know if he was allowed. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, voice rough. "I was scared, I was stupid. I thought, if I pushed you away first, it wouldn't hurt as much when—" He broke off, swallowing hard. I waited. I owed him that much. A few more seconds of my life. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. "I thought I could fix it. I thought you'd understand." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. I had cried enough for both of us. "I did understand," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I understood every time you didn't show up, every time you laughed when you should have fought for me, every time you made me feel like I wasn't enough." He flinched, like each word hit him physically. "Good. Let it." "I loved you," I said, the words tasting like blood in my mouth. "I loved you so much I forgot how to love myself." He stepped closer again, desperation radiating off him in waves. "Please don't go," he whispered. "We can fix this. We can figure it out." I shook my head, slow, final. "I can't be the only one holding this together," I said. "And I'm tired, Nicholas. I'm so tired of fighting for someone who won't fight for me." Silence stretched between us, thick and choking. He reached out finally, fingers brushing the sleeve of my jacket, a ghost of a touch, before dropping away. I grabbed the handles of my suitcase, slinging my purse over my shoulder. Beans meowed from his carrier at my feet, as if urging me on. As I turned toward the door, Nicholas spoke again. Soft, broken. "I love you." I paused, just for a second, letting the words hang there. Once they would have been enough to make me stay. Now they just sounded empty. "I know," I said softly, without looking back. "But love isn't supposed to feel like this, and with that, I stepped out into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind me like the last nail in a coffin. The air outside was cool, sharp against my tear-stained cheeks. I dragged my suitcase down the stairs, one step at a time, my heart breaking and healing all at once with every clumsy, determined step. I didn't know what was waiting for me beyond that night. All I knew was that whatever it was, it had to be better than this. It had to be. Leaving wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of something raw, unfamiliar, terrifying. I thought once I walked away, the pain would stay behind, trapped inside those empty walls, inside him. But heartbreak has a way of following you, clinging to your skin, whispering doubts when the nights get too quiet. Some days it felt like drowning. Other days, like I was floating just far enough to breathe. Healing isn't clean, it's not a straight line, it's messy, brutal, beautiful in the ugliest ways. I didn't have a map for this, no checklist, no promises that it would get better. All I had was the decision to try, to rebuild a life I barely remembered how to want, one fragile, stubborn piece at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The first night away from him, I barely slept. Lena's pull-out couch creaked with every breath I took, the unfamiliar ceiling spinning slowly above me. Even surrounded by the quiet hum of a safe place, I still felt adrift. I missed him. God, I hated how much I missed him. The shape of him beside me, the sound of his keys jingling at the door, the way he used to mumble goodnight against my hair without even thinking about it. Grief is funny like that. It sneaks up on you, not just when you're sad, but when you're lonely, when you're reaching for toothpaste and realise it's still on the wrong shelf, when you're setting 2 plates on the table out of habit and have to quietly slide one back into the cabinet. The little ghosts of him haunted everything. At first, I tried to outrun it, filling every minute of every day. Coffee with Lena, dinner with Elliot, mindless TV shows playing in the background just so I didn't have to sit in silence with myself. But grief doesn't care how busy you are. It finds you anyway, in the shower, in the grocery store, in the stupid song that pops up on the radio at the worst possible moment. About a week after I moved out, I found myself standing in the cereal aisle, staring blankly at a box of Frosted Flakes, blinking back tears. Because it was his favourite. Because I didn't know if I should still buy it. Because somehow it felt like losing him all over again. I left the store without buying anything. I cried the whole drive back to Lena's place. And then I let myself fall apart. No brave face. No pretending I was okay. Just me, on the bathroom floor, sobbing into a towel like my life was ending. But somewhere in the middle of all that, something shifted. I realised I wasn't crying because I wanted him back. I was crying because I missed who I used to be before him. Before I made myself smaller to fit inside the shrinking space he was willing to offer me. And that realisation, as brutal as it was, felt like a tiny crack of light breaking through the wreckage. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went hiking, alone. The trail was muddy and the air was sharp, stinging my cheeks as I climbed. I slipped once, cursing under my breath, scraping my hands raw on the rocks. But when I reached the lookout point, the same one where he proposed, I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I just stood there, heart hammering against my ribs, breathing in the cold, wild air, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about him. I wasn't thinking about who I had been or who I had lost. I was just breathing, existing, alive. Healing wasn't a straight line after that. There were still bad days. Hell, there were bad weeks. Days when getting out of bed felt like moving mountains. Nights when the silence pressed too hard against my chest. But I stopped pretending it was supposed to be easy. I let myself be messy. I let myself hurt. And slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice it happening. I started to find pieces of myself again, in the way I sang, badly, while cooking dinner, in the way I stayed up too late reading books I loved, in the way I laughed, really laughed, when Lena told a terrible joke. Piece by piece, day by day, breath by breath, I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was rebuilding. Not the life I had with him, not the life we planned, but something entirely my own. And even though the future still felt blurry, uncertain, even though I was still patching up the cracks he left behind, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I thought I knew the whole story. I thought the worst was already behind me. But heartbreak, it has a way of hiding secrets in the wreckage. Just when I started to find my footing again, when I finally began stitching myself back together, a new message lit up my phone. A name I never expected to see. Maria, the woman I had quietly blamed. The stranger who, without even knowing it, had stood at the centre of everything falling apart. Her message was simple, direct. We need to talk. There's more you don't know. And just like that, the ground shifted beneath me again, because if there's one thing worse than heartbreak, it's realising the story you've been telling yourself was only half the truth. I agreed to meet Maria the next morning at a little coffee shop near the park, neutral ground, somewhere public, somewhere safe. Still, my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I wrapped them around the lukewarm cup of coffee I didn't even want. The bell above the door jingled, and there she was, Maria. She looked different than I remembered, less polished, more human somehow. No flawless makeup, no perfect hair, just jeans, a plain sweater, sneakers, almost nervous. She spotted me immediately, offering a tentative smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I forced myself to nod, heart hammering against my ribs, as she slid into the booth across from me. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Just two strangers sitting across a chasm built from misunderstandings and half-truths. Finally, she cleared her throat, voice soft but steady. "I'm not here to fight," she said. I think you deserve to know everything." I said nothing, just waited. Let her sit with the weight of it. She glanced down at her coffee, tracing the rim of the cup with a trembling fingertip. "I didn't know," she said. "Not until a few days ago. I swear to you, I never thought of him that way." Her voice cracked, raw with something that almost sounded like guilt. I stayed silent. I wanted to believe her. I didn't know if I could. Maria fumbled for her phone, scrolling furiously before sliding it across the table to me. Text messages, screenshots, all from Nicholas. The pattern was there. At first, innocent, work updates, memes, team jokes, but then, little comments. "You're easy to talk to." "I wish things were less complicated." "You get me." I felt my stomach twist, bile rising in the back of my throat. She wasn't lying. The texts weren't flirty. Not really. But the intimacy was unmistakable. The slow, creeping line you cross without even realising you've left the safety of it behind. Maria pulled the phone back, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't encourage it, I swear. I barely even responded outside of work stuff. I have a boyfriend. He was at the Christmas party, remember?" I nodded numbly. I did remember. I just hadn't wanted to remember. Maria exhaled, as if she'd been holding her breath for weeks. "But there's more," she said, leaning in slightly, lowering her voice. "Paul, he's the one who stirred it all up. He kept telling Nicholas he was missing out, that he wasn't really living if he got married. He kept bringing me up, twisting everything." My heart slammed harder. Paul, Mason's idiot friend. The guy Nicholas suddenly started spending all his time with. Maria's hands gripped her coffee cup so tightly I thought it might shatter. "I heard them once," she said. "Paul told him, 'Why settle? You could have someone like Maria if you weren't rushing into marriage.'" Yeah. She looked at me then, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm not that person. I didn't want any part of this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I stared at her, my mind reeling. This wasn't about her. Not really. It wasn't even entirely about Paul, though God, how I wanted to hate him. No, this was about Nicholas. Nicholas who let himself be poisoned. Nicholas who didn't shut it down. Nicholas who chose to stand at the edge of the cliff and jump. Maria wiped at her eyes, sniffing hard. I didn't want you to think it was your fault," she said, voice trembling. "You didn't do anything wrong." The kindness in her words, the brutal, awful kindness, was the final blow. I managed to thank her, voice ragged, barely more than a croak, and stumbled out of the coffee shop into the biting morning air. I leaned against the brick wall, breathing hard, like I'd just run a marathon I hadn't signed up for. My whole body shook. Not from sadness this time, from anger, from the raw, burning clarity of it. Nicholas hadn't just broken my heart. He'd let it happen, piece by piece, pretending he was helpless, pretending he was still the man who knelt in the grass and asked for forever. And now, I didn't just mourn what we had, I mourned the girl who had trusted him, the girl who thought love could survive anything, because now I knew the truth. Some betrayals don't come with slammed doors or shouted insults. Some come in whispers, in careless laughter, in the slow, silent shifting of someone's loyalty away from you. And in the end, it wasn't another woman who broke us. It was himself. There's a moment before a storm, where the air goes still, where the world holds its breath. That's what it felt like, driving to Karina's apartment, the place where it would all unravel. Properly. Finally. Not just half-truths whispered in bars. Not just cowardly texts and empty apologies. Face to face. All of us. No more hiding. I didn't know what Dominic would say. I didn't know what Paul would do. I didn't even know if I could stay calm when the weight of everything they'd broken pressed down on me. But I knew this much. I wasn't walking into that room to beg for anything. Not forgiveness, not explanations, not some half-hearted version of love stitched back together with guilt and regret. I was walking in to end it. For good. Karina's apartment smelled like takeout and tension. The second I stepped inside, I could feel it. A low, buzzing current under the polite greetings and stiff smiles. Valerie was already there, sitting rigidly at the dining table, twisting a napkin in her hands. Paul lounged on the couch like he owned the place, tossing popcorn into his mouth with an infuriating smirk. Dominic stood by the window, arms crossed tight over his chest, jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Karina gave me a small, steady nod as I walked in. A silent promise, I'm with you. I dropped my bag by the door, heart hammering in my chest, and took a seat across from Dominic. The air between us was so thick I could taste it. Bitter. Metallic. Nobody spoke at first. The silence stretched and stretched, until finally Valerie cleared her throat. We're here, she said softly, because things have gone too far to pretend anymore. Paul snorted under his breath. I shot him a look sharp enough to draw blood. Yeah, I said, my voice low but steady. Let's not pretend anymore. I turned to Dominic. I didn't give him a chance to speak first. I was done waiting for him to find his spine. You didn't just hurt me, I said. You humiliated me. You lied to me. You let other people, him. I jerked my chin toward Paul. Decide how much I was worth. Dominic flinched. Good. Paul rolled his eyes, slouching deeper into the couch. Come on, he drawled. It was a joke. Everybody jokes. My hands clenched into fists under the table. No, I said, turning on him, voice slicing through the room like a blade. You joked. You stirred the pot. You whispered poison in his ear until he didn't know which way was up. Paul opened his mouth to argue, but Karina beat him to it. Enough, she snapped, her voice trembling with fury. You've done enough, Paul. You're not helping. You never were. For the first time, Paul looked rattled. He shifted in his seat, muttering something under his breath. Dominic stared at the floor like it could somehow save him. I leaned forward, pinning him with a look that left no room for escape. I needed you to stand up for me, I said, not just when it was easy, especially when it wasn't. His shoulders sagged like a puppet with its strings cut. I'm sorry, he mumbled. I messed up. I got scared. I shook my head. Fear doesn't excuse betrayal. He looked up then, eyes shining with something that might have been regret. But regret wasn't enough. Not anymore. You didn't lose me because you were scared, I said, voice rising. You lost me because you chose to listen to your fear instead of fighting for me. You lost me because when it mattered most, you stood there and let me fall. Dominic opened his mouth, maybe to apologise again, maybe to beg, but I raised a hand to stop him. I'm not here for another apology, I said. I'm not here to patch up the ruins you left behind. I stood up, feeling the weight of every moment, every memory, every hope I was leaving behind. I'm here to tell you that it's over. The words landed like a gunshot. Final. Irrevocable. Paul scoffed. Good riddance, he muttered. Karina turned on him so fast he actually flinched. You should leave, she said coldly, and don't bother coming back. But Paul blustered for a second, then grabbed his jacket and shoved past me, slamming the door behind him. Good. Let the door hit him on the way out. Dominic sagged into the chair across from me, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. Broken. But it wasn't my job to fix him. Not anymore. Without another word, I turned, scooped up my bag, and walked to the door. I paused just long enough to say, without looking back, I hope someday you figure out what real love looks like. And then, I walked out into the night. The cool air hit my skin like a baptism. Sharp, clean, new. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just walked. Away from the wreckage. Away from the boy who couldn't love me the way I deserved. Towards something unknown. But finally, completely, mine. You don't wake up one morning and feel healed. You don't cross some invisible finish line where the pain packs its bags and quietly leaves. It's slower than that. Quieter. Messier. Healing doesn't announce itself. It comes in fragments. A morning when you realise you didn't think of him first thing. A night when the bed doesn't feel quite so empty anymore. A laugh that bursts out of you before you can remember to be sad. I thought walking away was the end of the story. It wasn't. It was only the first step into a new life I would have to build from the ruins he left behind. There were still nights when the memories clung to me, still mornings when the silence in my apartment felt too loud, but somewhere between the heartbreak and the healing, I started finding myself again, piece by broken piece, breath by shaky breath. And the girl I was becoming, the woman clawing her way out of the wreckage, was someone I never would have met if he hadn't let me go. Starting over wasn't glamorous. It wasn't montage scenes with upbeat music and new haircuts. It was messy. It was hard. It was lonely. But it was mine. The first thing I did was delete our shared playlists. It sounds stupid, but standing there with my thumb hovering over the delete button, it felt like cutting the last thread tethering me to a life I no longer wanted. Click, gone. Next came the apartment. I painted the walls. Bright, defiant colours. Nothing neutral, nothing safe. I bought cheap art prints from the market downtown, filled the shelves with books he'd always teased me for loving. I bought a new mug. Bright yellow, obnoxiously cheerful. The kind of mug that practically screamed, I'm still here. Each small change stitched another piece of me back together. But it wasn't just about changing the outside, it was about reclaiming the inside too. I signed up for a pottery class at the community centre. I was terrible at it, clay flying everywhere, pots that collapsed like wet pancakes. But every time I pulled a crooked, misshapen cup off the wheel, I felt a strange surge of pride. It didn't have to be perfect to be worth keeping. Neither did I. There were nights when the loneliness pressed heavy against my ribs, when the silence wrapped around me so tightly it felt like drowning, but I didn't run from it anymore. I let it sit with me. I let it teach me that being alone wasn't the same as being abandoned. I learned to like my own company, to trust my own silence. Slowly, life started to fill in the cracks. Lena dragged me to a trivia night where I laughed until I cried. Elliot helped me build a rickety IKEA bookshelf while we argued about which way the screws were supposed to face. Valerie sent me a plant. A new beginning, she wrote in the card. And somehow I managed not to kill it. One afternoon, standing on my tiny balcony, watching the mint I planted grow wild and unruly, I realised something. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. Without him. Without the version of my life I thought I couldn't live without. I didn't need Nicholas to complete me. I never did. I was already whole. I had just forgotten. And when memories of him drifted in, because they still did sometimes when I wasn't paying attention, I didn't fight them. I didn't crumble. I let them come. I let them pass. They were just that now. Memories. Not anchors. Not cages. Just echoes of a life I had outgrown. One night, months after everything ended, I passed the Rusty Nail on my way home. The same bar where it all started to fall apart. I thought about going in. Thought about seeing if he was still there, nursing regrets at the same sticky table. But then I smiled to myself and kept walking. I didn't need to know. I didn't need to see it. I had my own life to live. A life that didn't wait in back rooms for apologies that would never come. A life that didn't shrink to fit inside someone else's fears. And as I walked down the street, the cool night air lifting my hair, the city buzzing quietly around me, I realised I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even broken. I was free. And this freedom, messy, complicated, beautiful, was the best thing he ever gave me. Without meaning to, without deserving to. I smiled wider, the kind of smile that starts in your chest and works its way outward until you're glowing from the inside out. Because in the end, he didn't break me. He set me free, and I wasn't looking back, not anymore. Every story has an ending, but not every ending is a tragedy. Some endings come quietly, not with slammed doors or angry tears, but with a soft exhale, a final goodbye whispered to the version of yourself who stayed too long. This wasn't the ending I imagined. It wasn't the fairy tale. It wasn't forever. But it was honest. It was mine. And maybe that's what healing really is, not erasing the pain, but walking through it, owning it, and choosing to keep going anyway. I didn't get the wedding. I didn't get the perfect love story. But I got something better. I got myself back. And sometimes that's the most powerful ending of all. Looking back now, it's almost hard to believe how much we all changed. Dominic stayed at the construction company, working longer hours, quieter than he used to be. Karina told me he started seeing a therapist regularly, trying in his own way to untangle the mess he never knew how to fix. I wish him healing, from a distance. Paul faded into the background, just like people who thrive on chaos always do once the damage is done. A necessary loss, an overdue one. Valerie and Karina. They became more than just Dominic's family, they became mine. Proof that not everything built during that time had to be torn down. As for me, I moved into a little sunlit apartment with peeling floors and a balcony that barely fit a chair. I planted flowers in chipped pots. I filled the shelves with books I loved without apology. I stayed up late laughing with friends, hiking trails that I once thought I'd never walk alone. I found joy again. Not the kind wrapped in someone else's promises, but the kind I built with my own 2 hands. There are days when the old wounds ache a little, ghosts of a life that almost was, but they don't haunt me anymore. They remind me how far I've come. I'm not who I was when I fell in love. I'm not who I was when I walked away. I'm someone stronger now, someone softer too, in all the ways that matter. And as I look forward toward the vast, unknown stretch of my future, I don't feel fear anymore. I feel ready. Ready for new beginnings. Ready for unexpected joys. Ready for a love that doesn't ask me to shrink or settle. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that walking away from what isn't right isn't a failure. It's a victory. And this life, messy, beautiful, unfinished, is the greatest prize I could have ever given myself. Before I close this chapter, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for sitting with me through the heartbreak, the unravelling, the long road back to myself. Thank you for listening. Not just with your ears, but with your heart. Thank you for proving that even in the middle of pain, we are never truly alone. Wherever you are, whatever battles you're fighting, whatever healing you're chasing, I hope you find your own beginning too. Because trust me, there is life after heartbreak. And sometimes, it's even better than the dream you had to leave behind. Sometimes, the greatest love story you will ever live is the one where you choose yourself. It takes courage to walk away from something you once believed was your forever. It takes strength to rebuild from the ruins without bitterness. And it takes faith, deep, unshakable faith, to believe that what lies ahead can be even more beautiful than what you left behind. Heartbreak doesn't define you. Betrayal doesn't break you. Fear doesn't own you. You are not the scars they left. You are the fire that survived the burning. You are the one who stayed, the one who rose, the one who chose, finally, irrevocably, to write your own story, without permission, without apology, without fear. And that is the kind of victory no one can ever take from you.